Hi there, I'm Kazul and welcome to my lair for the Anthro Northwest Virtual Minicon. Today I'm going to show you how I use thermoplastics in my cosplay and creature fursuit creations. Thermoplastics are a material that become pliable when heated up and harden down when cooled. They're simple to work with and a quick way to add structural elements or detail to your costume. So let's start this creation ritual. Woo! There are many different brands and kinds of thermoplastics. Each has its own qualities, its own strengths and weaknesses. I don't have time to go over them all for this video. We're just going to look at kind of 1/2 with a bonus one at the end if I have time. So the first one, well, the one we're going to be looking at is Warbla. Now, it comes in several varieties. The versions we're going to look at is regular vanilla Warbla. It's just Warbla brown. You can see it has a kind of textury matte side and then a shiny, more smooth side. And then there's Warbler Black, which you can see its matte side has a lot less texture than the brown, and it also has a shiny side. Now what Warbler is, it's basically a mixture of 3 components: some thermoplastic, some sawdust, and some glue. It's basically what it is. The black has a little finer sawdust and particulate, but you can definitely see in the brown, you're like, oh yeah, that's sawdust. When you heat it up, it'll smell kind of like burnt wood, just because of the sawdust in there. Now, so the shiny side actually has a little bit more glue in it. So that's the side that'll be sticky, most sticky when you heat it up. Even though this side will have some stickiness to it, it's the shiny side that'll have the most glue in it. So let me put that aside. Let me show you an example of where I've used Warbla in a costume. So this is my Arakoa, and I needed the face to sit away from the wearer's face. So I made this helmet out of Warbla for a structural element that I could screw some posts into. There's screws under here that hold these metal standoffs that mount the head forward. I also used Warbla on the hinges, though it's painted so you can't see it. And I just lined the inside with the helmet with some headliner foam, but you can see it creates a good, mostly rigid structure that is able to hold a good amount of weight. And this is stable. I'm not worried about it breaking or anything. And the hinges have held up great for many years. I built this in 2014. So the first way I'm going to show you how to work with Warbla is called the sandwich method. To use the sandwich method, you need some 2mm fun foam. Just like the really thin regular fun foam. And for this demonstration, I cut out some 2 little shapes that I'm going to show you how this works. So you got to cut out some pieces that you know it There we go. So I've got some pieces, so you need 2 pieces, one for the top, one for the bottom. You're basically sandwiching this foam in the middle. So I've got the shiny side of this Warbla up, and basically we're going to glue down those and then cover the Warbla like this. So to work with the Warbler, you'll need a heat gun. I like to have this cookie sheet that I just turn upside down so that the heat doesn't warp anything. And I also have this cheap silicone baking mat just to keep it from sticking from things. So this Warbler, shiny side up, we're gonna heat it up. You'll tell it's heated up. It gets a little bit darker in color and you can see it's kind of flexible. Be careful when you touch it. It could be really hot. So I'm gonna take these two little fun foam pieces and make sure to press them down. And now we need to heat up these other pieces. I heated those glue side up, so I'm gonna take and put them over now and start them by sticking them down. So I like to take wooden sculpting tools and take and press it around the edge. I find that wooden tools tend to stick to the Warbler less than metal sculpting tools. It works better even still, if, like this is a raw wood one. If it's like a sealed wood, it works even better. So basically we're just pressing around the edges to make sure that those little pieces of fun foam are really sandwiched and encased inside the Warbler. Now this Warbler is still warm, so we're just gonna take our scissors. When it's warm, it's really easy to cut. So we're just gonna cut around the outside edges of both these pieces. Now, save these scraps. You'll see why later. Sometimes little bubbles form. Those are a point of weakness. So if you can like take a sharp needle or a sharp sculpting tool, something you can take and kind of poke a hole, get the air and out and smash it down again. I'm just using a pencil. It kind of mars the surface, so if you're using this for a finished thing, it's not as good to do it. So now I've got these two shapes. I'm going to heat them up a little bit again and then stick them together to create a 3D shape. There we go, we got like a little boat shape almost. So we're gonna set this aside and let it cool so that you can see the strength. It's still a little warm. As it cools down, it'll get harder, but if you need it to keep a certain shape, like make sure it doesn't sag while it's cooling, you can like dunk it in some cold water or put it by a fan to help it cool faster. But we're just gonna set that aside for now. So back to these scraps. These were the scraps that I cut off of it. They're already starting to cool and kind of hold their shape. The scraps are a really great The scraps are a really great thing to keep because Warbla, you can basically mold it down into a putty. So this was a shape that I did earlier. It's just a little guy, kind of a snake that I rolled out of the Warbla, and you can see just how this is like super tough. Scissors won't really have an effect on it. This is solid. This isn't breaking if this is part of your costume. And going back to here, I kind of use these little snakes here to create little U shapes that I actually sewed this elastic onto, so I didn't have to use glue, so it's a mechanical connection, and those have held up really great. I've not had a problem with them. Now, you can just heat this Warbla up with your heat gun again. It's starting to get a little overheated. Be careful, it gets very hot. And it's basically like a putty now, a very hot putty that you can kind of form, and this is an older piece. Take and smash it on with your wood tool to really create that connection and allow the glue to bond to it. And there you go. You have a little thing that will dry or cool down pretty hard. So if we return to this, it's still a little warm, but it's holding its shape much better. And you can see if I push on it like this, it's still pretty strong, and I'm pushing pretty hard. So, and it's still a little warm. It needs to cool down some more. Going back to this, when you do this with Warbla, it gets really hard to heat it up again with just the hot gun, the heat gun. So I like to keep a little toaster oven on hand, and I'll put big pieces like that in the toaster oven on the very lowest setting and let it sit in there for maybe 20 minutes. And by then it'll be heated all the way through, and I can take it. You can actually roll Warbla out into sheets again if you wanted to. That's why I love this stuff. It's like every little scrap can be used again. This is Future Kaz coming in to tell you that this part of the helmet on the Arakoa is sandwiched Warbla. This part here is just the rolled up, like a worm of Warbla. The hinge I actually made with about 4 layers of just solid Warbla to make sure that it was really super solid, and it just has like a regular screw in there as the rotating bit. Let's see, moving on to the black Warbla. So what I love about the black Warbla is that it's a lot smoother. Oh wait, I should show you. You got to be careful not to overheat your Warbla. You can see this has kind of been overheated. It gets really rough and stuff. Anyway, the black Warbla I like because it's a lot finer of a finish. If you noticed that when you heat up the Warbla, it gets like this really more exaggerated texture, and it's really rough. But for finished things like eyebrows or eyelashes and lips, the black Warbla, it's already black, first of all, so it's the perfect color, and you don't have to paint it. And it creates nice, smooth eyelids. So the way I did this And with this, like if you don't like the job that happened, it's like fairly easy to just pull off again. I mean, I could glue that back on, but if I wasn't happy with that, I could take this off, reheat it, and redo it. So we're gonna redo it right now. Taking this shiny side up. We're just gonna carefully take and roll the edge once. Make sure it's heated. And roll the edge twice. So now you kind of have like a raised lid looking area and a kind of a flat flange to help it taper off. So I'm gonna take this and kind of redo this eyelid. Oops, kind of not long enough. There we go. So voila, it's done again. And that'll cool and be perfect. So that's mostly what I like using black Warbler floor. It is, because it has a finer texture, the glue there isn't quite as much glue in there, so it doesn't hold together in a putty form quite as well as the brown. And it's less sticky than the brown. But so that's why I just like to use the black on kind of the finishing things, and definitely the brown for anything structural. Let's see, going back to this. Okay, this is pretty much cooled. There's a little bit of give there. Like this is super strong. Scissors would have a hard time grabbing it. It's not going to be able to be poked. It's tough stuff, and it's really easy to form. Going back to the putty of Warbla, something cool that you can do is we're forming this into a putty, and we're gonna take just like a bolt or something and sort of wrap it in and stick it to something, I guess. I guess we didn't need to stick it to something. Anyway, so now we have like basically a bolt embedded in the Warbla, and when this cools and we take that bolt out, it'll leave the impression of those threads and you can re-thread stuff into it. Now, I mean, it's not as strong and the threads will wear out eventually. You could embed like nuts in there too. Like if you had a little nut to embed in the Warbla, that could happen too. Oops. This is kind of a sloppy job, but there we go. We're gonna let this cool. This little creation. We're gonna let this sit aside and cool. Going back to this little thing, like I mean, that's on there really strong. And this is another piece of sandwiched Warbla, so you can see like it can bend a little bit, and if you put a ton of force into it, you can rip it, but it's really strong stuff. Another application I've done is using it around insulation foam, which is brittle and can be dented and bent, but this will not. You can use this for finished stuff, like maybe the black stuff. You can take a Dremel and kind of Dremel out. You see, I quickly wrapped this one, so there's a little bit of wrinkles, but you can Dremel those out. It will gum up your Dremel just because of the glue. The friction will heat it up enough that it'll kind of get stuck, so just be warned. But it does work. And you can add little sculptural details on top of it. Now for a little bonus content, another thermoplastic that I've been dying to try because I think it's really cool is this Instamorph. It is a whole bunch of little beads, and you can form it into little things. I see the potential as teeth because the plastic has a little bit of translucency, just a little bit, and I think it resembles teeth a lot. Let me show you how I work with it. Now, their instructions recommend putting it with heated water, but sometimes I don't have time to go heat up water. So I just take and put some of the beads in like a tape container. This will keep them from being blown away by your heat gun. Now, this plastic, when you heat it up, gets clear, if you can. So it's pretty neat stuff. You gotta just touch it gently, be gentle with it, make sure it doesn't like burn your hands. Now, if you have, this picks up textures really easy. So if you have a textured surface, like that would be a good thing to roll it on if that's the texture you want. So I'm just gonna form it into a little tooth, and I'm going to form my tooth around this little piece of EVA foam. Kind of so it feels like it's sitting there. And it does pick up fingerprints pretty easy, so it'll be hard to make it like a really fine, pristine tooth, but it'll look good as an old, dirty tooth. So I'm just gonna take this little acid brush and kind of press the coarse bristles into it to create kind of a toothy pattern. Take two of them so I can press front and back. Yeah, I don't know how well the camera will pick this up, but there's nice amount of detail on there now. And you can just dunk this back into some cool water to help cool it down and set it back. back into what it's supposed to be. And what it'll look like when it's done is something like this. I don't know if the camera is picking it up, but it really does have like a pretty cool translucency to it. And you can see the little acid brush marks, and like here's another piece that I did it on. Ooh, it might just be blown out. Anyway, maybe I'll superimpose some pictures on top of it. But I imagine that painting this would be pretty easy and make all those details pop, and they would make some really wicked teeth, and they're really light and strong, so that would be a lot of fun. So I hope you enjoyed this look at thermoplastics and how to use them as structural elements or finishing elements in your costumes. They're really awesome, and the Warbla, man, I use that everywhere in my costumes. It's a little expensive, but totally worth it, because it's so easy to create structure with. Oh, before we go, let's look back at this. So we can just unscrew this and screw it back in, or with this bolt up here. There we go. And it can go back in if we so choose. Hold stuff together for you. Nice. So yeah, if you have any questions, you can message me on your platform of choice. Here's all my information. So I hope you enjoy the rest of the virtual mini-con. And I'm Kazul, reminding you to embrace your inner beast.